A new refugee crisis is threatening India's security. Thousands are escaping a devastating civil war in Myanmar to enter India. And this is a development that could inflame tensions in India's northeast. So what is going on here? Since last week, thousands of refugees from Myanmar have crossed into Mizoram. They are escaping deadly fighting between Myanmar's military and the resistance forces in that country's civil war. India already hosts around 80,000 refugees from Myanmar, and that problem could get a lot worse. So how did we get here? In 2021, Myanmar's military overthrew the country's democratically elected government. That led to a civil war, which has gone on now for over 2 years and has displaced almost 2 million people in the country. So who are the major players here? The military is fighting the forces of the government in exile, the National Unity Government, or the NUG. The military is also fighting off the armed militias of Myanmar's various ethnic groups. Now it's become fairly clear that the civil war has been going badly for the military. It's been losing territory, troops and control at a steady pace for some time now. And that problem got a lot worse in October, when an alliance of armed groups, known as the Three Brotherhood Alliance, launched an offensive against the military. According to reports, they have captured over 100 military outposts. Other anti-military groups have also launched attacks across Myanmar. These attacks have put the military on the back foot. And that brings us to the present crisis. Last week, some of these anti-military groups attacked and took over 2 military outposts in Chin state, which borders India. Now, these camps are a short distance from the Indian state of Mizoram. The fighting here led to airstrikes by Myanmar's military, and thousands of people from these border regions have now been escaping that fighting and moving into Mizoram. Now, Mizoram already hosts over 30,000 refugees from Myanmar who have fled the violence in the country since the military coup in 2021. Now, this refugee crisis is expected to get worse. Anti-military groups have indicated that these offensives and attacks are only going to continue. If violence escalates in Chin and Sagaing provinces, which both border India, thousands of refugees could flood across the border. And this has India's government worried. But why? The first reason is the delicate situation in the northeast, and particularly in the state of Manipur. In the last few months, we've seen ethnic clashes in Manipur led to the deaths of almost 200 people. Part of the bitter political divisions there come from fears of illegal migration from Myanmar. Some groups have accused these migrants from Myanmar of taking over forest land. Others see these migrants as major players in the illegal cross-border trade in drugs and arms. Now, while these accusations are disputed, it seems clear that an influx of refugees into a state like Manipur could worsen an already tense situation. Manipur borders Sagaing state in Myanmar. If the fighting escalates, refugees fleeing the violence could choose to cross the border into Manipur. While Manipur has suspended its free movement regime with Myanmar, very little of the border is fenced, and experts say that this could make it very difficult to stop refugees. On the other hand, Mizoram has been more welcoming of migrants from Myanmar, given close ethnic links between their peoples. However, a large influx of refugees into a small state like Mizoram may also cause increased social stress and financial strain for the state government. Increased violence and instability in Myanmar could also have some impact on the cross-border flow of arms between India and Myanmar, with consequences for stability in the northeastern states. Secondly, India is concerned because its neighborhood strategy is at risk. India has so far had a policy of working with the military regime, which has attracted criticism. According to United Nations estimates, India has sold over $51 million in arms to Myanmar's military. Unlike the rest of the world, it has also not isolated Myanmar diplomatically or slapped sanctions on the military regime. But why in the world would India want to be associated with a regime like this? Well, for one thing, India is worried about China. Beijing has a strategic foothold in Myanmar. And India is worried that if it refuses to work with the military regime, then Myanmar will be pushed closer to China. Second, India also has a vast border with Myanmar, and it needs Myanmar's military to help fight insurgent groups, prevent illegal migration, and generally maintain peace along this frontier. Finally, India also wants to protect its connectivity projects in Myanmar. These include big-ticket projects like the Kalatan Transit Project and the India-Myanmar-Thailand Trilateral Highway. Each of these projects is key to India's Act East policy with Southeast Asia. But this latest offensive shows that India may have made a bad bet on Myanmar. As the military loses more territory, experts suggest that its control over the country has loosened. and anti-military groups who have criticized India's policy of closeness towards the Myanmar military have made rapid gains at the military's expense. And that could be bad news for India. A spokesperson for a key resistance group argued that India's closeness to the military could hurt it if the resistance groups take power over the country. Besides this, observers of the situation argue that while India has supported Myanmar's military, the military regime has not kept its promises to India. For example, Myanmar's military is suspected of providing support to insurgent groups operating in India's northeast. If India expects the Myanmar junta to ensure stability along its borders, it couldn't be more mistaken, says Anshuman Chaudhary of the Center for Policy Research, a think tank. Analysts like Chaudhary also don't agree that India must work with Myanmar's military to safeguard its connectivity projects like the Kaladan multimodal transit project. According to them, the military doesn't control much of the territory through which these projects pass. Instead, anti-military resistance groups, which remember we said have made great gains, control this territory. So India gets effectively nothing for working with a military that undermines its security and can't deliver on basic things like connectivity projects. Meanwhile, India's ties to the military may just have hurt its goodwill among pro-democracy groups in Myanmar and abroad. And now, a new refugee crisis could make this situation worse for India.